The night was cool in Berkeley. The streets outside hummed with college life, students laughing, radios blaring, car horns barking as evening settled in. Inside a modest apartment, 19-year-old Patricia Hearst stood at the kitchen counter, barefoot, distracted, a simple dinner sizzling on the stove, a wedding dress, catalog, half open on the table. She wasn't thinking about her family's empire. She wasn't thinking about politics. She was thinking about her life, small, ordinary, and finally, her own. Then a knock at the door, a crash, screams. Masked figures swarmed her apartment. Her fiancé was beaten unconscious. Patty was dragged from her safe little world into a darkness she would never fully escape. Because before the world ever saw Patty Hearst with a rifle in her hands, before the headlines screamed her name, the girl she had been was already starting to disappear. Welcome to GBR Life Transitions. I'm your host, Caitlin, and you're listening to GBR Life of Crimes, where we explore not just what happened in crimes committed by women, but why they happen, and the psychology behind them. Today's case, Patricia Campbell Hearst, the heiress kidnapped into horror, the hostage who became the criminal, and the terrifying reminder of just how fragile human identity really is. To understand Patty's fall, we have to go back, before it all, before the blindfolds, to the world she was born into. Patty Hearst entered her life surrounded by grandeur, mansions, private school, security guards, prestige so thick it suffocated. The Hearst name was America's royalty of influence, newspapers, television, money. Her grandfather, William Randolph Hearst, built empires of information, power, and fear. But Patty, she wasn't the empire builder. She was the quiet one, the invisible middle child. Patty was one of 5 daughters, sandwiched between louder, shinier siblings. In a family where attention was currency, Patty grew up learning that survival was to be small. She was shy, soft voice, drawn to books, to quiet friendships, to art, anywhere she could be herself without expectations clawing at her throat. Her parents, Randolph and Catherine, were figures more than nurturers. They loved from a distance, if they loved at all. Their real affair was with image, reputation. And so Patty learned early, be pleasant, be quiet, don't cause a scandal. The cost of rebellion in the Hearst family wasn't just punishment. It was eradication from their kingdom. By 19, Patty had managed a soft escape. She moved off campus, living with her fiancé, Stephen Weed, in a plain apartment near UC Berkeley. No marble floors, no reporters lurking at the gates, just cheap curtains, textbooks, freedom. It was the real first choice of her life, and she believed, naively, and very commonly at that age, that choosing small meant choosing safety. But the real danger wasn't lurking in the spotlight. It was waiting in the shadows. On February 4th, 1974, the Symbionese Liberation Army came for her. They weren't a sophisticated militia. They were a splintered cult of radicals, obsessed with toppling the system, desperate for attention, and willing to destroy a life to get it. They burst into Patty's apartment, dragged her screaming into a car trunk, and disappeared into the night. In that moment, Patty wasn't just kidnapped. She was stripped of safety, autonomy, and every fragile piece of identity she had barely begun to think about. Psychologists call it ego death through coercion. When someone is isolated, degraded, abused, all long enough, their self-concept dies. Not figuratively, neurologically. It's survival reprogramming. First comes the fear, then the confusion, then the surrender. Patty's captivity wasn't just physical, it was surgical. The SLA locked her in a dark closet for weeks. No light, no sound, no food unless she obeyed. They blasted revolutionary manifestos at her over and over. Your family abandoned you. The world will not save you. Only the SLA cares if you live. They assaulted her, emotionally and physically. They told her day after day that her survival depended on abandoning everything she had ever known. And inside that darkness, something began to fracture. And if you're struggling to imagine how deep that psychological transformation really was, think about it like this. If you've ever seen the movie V for Vendetta, you know the story of Evie Hammond, a woman kidnapped, imprisoned, and broken down by fear until she becomes something unrecognizable. Someone hardened, someone radicalized, someone who survives by being rewritten. The same psychological principles applied to Patty Hearst. The only difference, for Patty, it wasn't fiction. It wasn't a carefully orchestrated revolution. It was survival, raw, ugly, and messy. Where V for Vendetta shows radicalization as a path to power, Patty's journey shows how under real psychological torture, radicalization can become a weapon of survival. Not pride, not rebellion, but fear, layered so thick that the only way to stay alive was to become someone. And once that transformation happens, there's no easy way to get it back. When Patty finally reemerged months later, America barely recognized her. Patty was gone. Tanya had taken her place. The SLA had given her a new name. After a Cuban revolutionary, they gave her a new mission, and she accepted it, because by then, the mind she had built to survive had no choice left but to obey. In April of 1974, Patty was photographed inside the Hibernia Bank, barrette pulled low, expression vacant, mechanical. To the outside world, it looked like treason. To psychologists, it looked like classic survival through traumatic re-identification. When terror becomes your new normal, allegiance becomes your armor. Patty wasn't staging a rebellion. She was staging a survival. But trauma doesn't freeze the mind, it reshapes it. The SLA didn't just teach Patty new rules. They rewrote the very core of who she thought she was. And over time, the hostage became the soldier. Patty helped rob banks. She helped build explosives. She lived underground, sleeping in safe houses, changing names, changing faces. But inside, fragments of the old Patty still flickered. Moments of fear, doubt, longing. Moments where the small, soft-voiced girl who loved art and dreamed of an ordinary life almost clawed her way back to the surface. Almost. When Patty was finally arrested in September 1975, she didn't resist. She didn't plead for mercy. When asked her occupation, she answered coldly, urban guerrilla. Not because she had truly become one, but because that was the only identity left intact. Patty's defense team laid bare the brutality of her captivity, the isolation, the starvation, the psychological warfare. They introduced America to Stockholm Syndrome, a survival mechanism where hostages bond with their captors as a means of survival, both emotionally and physically. But the jury didn't want complex. They wanted clarity, because this was a girl who looked intact and clearly committed many crimes. A girl who didn't deny her involvement and didn't even seem to be ashamed of what she had done. But they weren't looking at Patty. They were looking at the SLA's creation. And so, Patty Hearst was convicted of bank robbery and sentenced to 7 years in prison. She served 22 months before being granted clemency by President Carter and later a full pardon by President Clinton. But freedom isn't the same as healing. Patty Hearst rebuilt her life, marrying Bernard Shaw, a former police officer who had been assigned to her security detail during her trial. They went on to have 2 daughters after the chaos finally ended. She lived as quietly as she could, like she originally intended. But the fracture inside her mind the place where Patricia ended and Tanya began, never fully healed. Because trauma isn't something you walk away from. It's something that rewires you from the inside out. Patty Hearst didn't choose revolution. She chose survival. Again and again and again. Until survival itself demanded she become unrecognizable. Her story reminds us that the human identity is not ironclad. It's delicate, it's conditional. It can be rewritten by love, by fear, by violence, especially in moments of pure survival when the pressure is high enough. Even the strongest minds can break into something they never imagined they could become, and truly anyone can become a criminal. This has been GBRLIFE of Crimes, part of GBRLIFE Transmissions. I'm Caitlin, reminding you that understanding the darkness helps us appreciate the light. Join me next time as we uncover another case that challenges everything we thought we knew about the criminal mind.